Okay, so today we're going to begin bowls. A lot of people find bowls much easier to create than cups and mugs. So we kind of actually started off with maybe some of the more advanced early small works this semester. And part of the rationale of that is so that you're really developing your skills with working on your hands on the inside and outside of forms. Okay, I think that's a really important skill to develop when you're wheel throwing, because when you're throwing bowls, one of the seems like a go-to method for creating bowls is just like pinching the walls and pulling up. And I'll show you guys that form. It's a really great, easy way to make bowls. But it doesn't serve you very well in the long run when you actually start making larger forms, okay? So that's why we structured this semester the way we have. But here is a small collection of bowls. Over here are some of my double wall bowls that I really like to make. Double wall because the interior of this is actually hollow, okay? So these are not actually like 1.5 inches thick. There's space in between the inner and outer wall. So I'm going to demonstrate how to actually throw these on Monday. I'm not going to do this today, but I'll show you on Monday. So these are all various clays and glazes that we have here. And then these are all mostly done here with B-Mix or porcelain. So one of my favorite clays that you guys now all have access to is B-Mix, right? And this is B-Mix with our Celadon. If you want to see what B-Mix looks like with a white slip on it, and then carved, kind of like a sgraffito, this is an example of that. So are these smaller little bowls. A lot of these bowls, you'll notice they look really similar because I did make most of these actually. I'm trying to think if there's any here I did not make. These I did not make. But I really like scooped bowls, and that's the version that I like to make. By no means do I want you to have want to feel like you need to mimic that in your own work. But I want you guys to kind of come up and feel these and just kind of see how you like handling them, what kind of function you would use these for. So this bowl and this bowl, they look kind of similar, but they also have very different shapes, right? What would you use a bowl like this for?
Soup, like cereal.
Cereal, soup, more like chowder. Cool. Like the more like fluidy kind of food. Why is that? Why would you use this for that kind of food? Volume? Okay, so the right amount of volume, yeah.
The way it's curved is kind of like harder to spill because it's got like that little stuff.
Yeah, so I'm going to show you guys how I make these lips. It does have that more of a container kind of form. So it is great, you know, for cereal, scooping out with your spoon. You kind of use this as a way of kind of like getting everything onto your spoon. So a bowl like this, it's a little more open, right? What would you use a bowl like this for?
Popcorn.
Popcorn, chips, dip. I use this bowl for more like rice dishes. Like I made lemongrass tofu last night, and I'm pretty sure I ate all this. Well, I washed everything. So yeah, thinking about like the overall shape and the form will dictate like how you're actually going to use it, right? So those are some of the things I really want you focusing on with this project. You know, what are some of the things that I like to eat? What kind of uses do I have actually in my kitchen or in my house, you know, for bowls? Like what do I use them for, and what would I like to make to complement that, right? So if you make a lot of ramen, you're probably gonna make bowls maybe a little bit bigger than this, right? This is kind of small for something like that, you know? Like even this bowl is like a little small for that, but it's getting there. You know, so thinking about like the scale, its overall form, like how you want it to function. You know, for instance, these double wall bowls over here, you know what I use these for? Any guesses?
Like a more
You said mortar and pestle, so mach is it Machiote? What is the name for the? I'll look it up. Close. Yes, I will sometimes, especially with these two. Guacamole. Guacamole is great in here. You put these in the fridge for like 5 to 10 minutes before you actually add the avocado to it. And then I'll just stir it up in here and mash it with my wooden spoon. I cover that with saran wrap and it stays green for a very long time. I gave one of these to my neighbors and they're like, we make guacamole in there all the time and it never turns brown. So there's something about like that insulation keeps the guacamole nice and cold. So this is like good for, you know, serving. These are great for like when you have friends or family over, you know, serving things in these. Because there's, you know, they add a little extra to your dinner. Little bowl that I turned into a berry bowl. So this is probably one of the most highly used items in my kitchen. I use it every day. I used it this morning, washed it out and brought it in, but this is for washing strawberries for my 5-year-old. So this is, I have little hole cutters I can lend you guys so you can actually make something like this, a little colander essentially. This is the mortar and pestle. This is a really thick porcelain. It's stained from, what's the last thing I made in here? Coriander. I think I was just mashing up some coriander seeds. So this also would serve as a bowl, okay? So I brought these out just so you can kind of think about other bowl forms that are not quite bowls. But these are totally okay if you guys want to start to explore maybe non-traditional bowls, but still like the bowl form. And then these are just regular bowls. If you want to, you know, move out of just like the traditional bowl form and start to, you know, explore other kinds of themes. These are from my Rocket Bowl series. I made a bunch of rocket bowls and rocket mugs. So these are all throne forms that I then attached to the central bowl. This was for my nephew when he was like 5 or 6 years old. I made him a bunch of these so he could like carry them around the house. You know, the other great thing about these like little handles, my brother would hang these up underneath his cabinets in their kitchen so they could dry, you know. And then my nephew could grab them when he was a little kid. I don't know how many he broke, but I kept one. And then the last thing I want to show you, talk about is how bowls are produced, mass produced. So I was in China several years ago, and I was able to visit some of these pottery villages. And there's this one pottery village that's right outside of Xi'an. It's like central China, near Fuping, and it's you drive into this like mountain village, and there's probably 100 or so chimneys, and all the chimneys are for kilns. And it's just a village that's just dedicated to making pottery. And I mean, literally everywhere you go, you're gonna trip over pottery that's just like strewn about. And this was one of those pieces. I was just like walking between these different potteries, and my foot snagged the top of this. It was protruding from the ground, and I just dug it out and brought it home with me. But I want to show this to you guys because this shows you how a lot of work is fired in other parts of the world, specifically China. So they make a lot of rice bowls over there, right? And on the insides of these, you'll find bowls that have this ring where it doesn't feel like glossy glaze, it's just a white slip. And that's so when they fire these, they stack them up in the kiln, and the foot rims of each of these line up right on that ring, and they don't stick to each other, but they're still food safe. So they'll stack literally 10 bowls and put those into the kiln. This way, they can fire thousands of pieces versus like 100 pieces, because these take up a lot of space. So think about if you're trying to fire like 10,000 bowls in a day, which a lot of potteries will do that actually. If you're trying to fire 10,000 bowls in a day, you don't want them just to be on the kiln shelves like this, right? We got to figure out other ways of firing them. So they would fire them like 10, 12 high at least. They cover them with saggers to keep stuff from falling into the bowls during the firing process. But yeah, I thought these are pretty cool because it gives you a great visual of how things are fired. fired together. Yeah, and then they come out of the kiln and they're not stuck together because there's no glaze under the foot rim and on this area, so where the slip is. So cute little bowls. And then this was what we call a second or a reject bowl, so they actually just gave this to me because it has some flaws in it. But yeah, so that's that. Any questions or comments about these? Yes?
So when they make those 10,000 bowls, is that like casted or do they like handmade or how do they produce that?
Both. I witnessed like when I was working at this ceramic art museum, I was an artist's assistant, so I would make other artists' work. And there was a studio potter guy that would come in the mornings, and he would throw 200 bowls in an hour, and it'd all just be like lined up on these little planks of wood. He'd go to lunch for like an hour, come back, flip them all over, trim them, and the next day would start all over again. And like his afternoon, he would just, work on glazes or something like that. And they would all be identical. And he was just one person. Like he would make 200 bowls like in the morning, like no problem. And so, when you're sitting there throwing the same form over and over and over again, you get really fast. Everything, that repetition, that muscle memory, all that has a big play in it. But there's also the flip side of it, like this village that I was at, there was also a lot of slip casting. So a lot of some of the bowls that came out of various families, and these were all like family run, all these different families there. Multi-generation families where you'd have like the grandmothers, the grandfathers working alongside like their kids and then their grandkids, slip casting pieces. Like I would go into like what were old kilns and they just looked like caves. And there would be, I don't know, probably 400 or 500 molds, like plaster molds. And one person would come along and just like pour a slip in each mold. And then it would sit there for, I don't know, maybe 45 minutes to an hour. Another person would come and dump them all out. It becomes like this little family, like factory essentially. So there's both sides of it. A lot of the ones that I saw though, bowl wise, were hand thrown, and not from a mold. So yeah, great question. Yeah, any other questions, comments? Okay, let me turn it off. All right, so